What you want to know is when I went in the army
Yeah,
to start with.
yeah. How old were you when you went in the army? I guess would be the first question.
Uh, 17, I guess.
17. You might have lied about your age.
Because after I did my basic training and my advanced training, I did my basic training in Quebec City or across the river.
Right.
Then I went to Camp Borden in Ontario, and I went in the Armoured Corps, and I started to train on tanks, and I was put on draft to go overseas, and they checked my age, and they took me off because I wasn't old enough. I had to wait for another birthday. So I did odd jobs. I even worked in the medical room for a month or so, and then I did a course on motorcycle.
And where was that? All in Quebec City?
To become old enough.
Right.
And then after I had my birthday, I was put on draft again, and I went overseas in the spring. We went over on the Andes. It was a rough old boat, and we had to sleep where you could on the floor. I got a hammock. That's another thing my chum said to me.
Get a hammock.
He said, don't, Christ. I grabbed a hammock. He said, don't take one of them. Geez, you'll never sleep in that. And I said, well, I never slept in a hammock before. I'm going to try it. So I hung her up there, and I claimed my hammock. And about the second day out, the guys in the hammock started choking down on the guys sleeping on the floor. And I said, oh, Lord, who is the wise one now?
Right.
I said, I'm nice and dry up there. There's nobody puking on me.
How long was the voyage over?
9 nights and 8 days.
Wow, that's pretty fast. I would have thought it would have taken longer than that.
Coming back was only 5 days.
And was there a whole, convoy of ships, or were you? No, you could never been alone.
We were alone.
You were alone.
We were alone. Yeah.
Wow.
There was about between 7,000 and 10,000 troops on the boat.
And a lone boat by itself going out across the sea.
No, they were too fast for. The only way the submarine could get them was if they were waiting and caught them when they were passing.
Get lucky.
But that's one thing. We stood out on the front one day, a couple of us, and we watched. And it wasn't rough, but the boat used to go up. There was markings on the boat there. And it used to go up 20 to 22 feet and then down.
Wow.
And would just go like that steady. But they would go too fast for if a submarine knew they were coming. But that's one thing we noticed too. From the back end, we watched every 7 minutes they were changing course.
So they could hear a submarine coming behind them, right?
They couldn't tell where because we checked it out, and every time we would watch the weight behind it. Be going this way, and then be going this way, and then be going maybe this way, and then maybe this way again.
Wow.
But coming back, we didn't see that. Well, we didn't look. We were just happy to get back. I was in England for over 2 years.
Where in England did they station you then?
Oh, we were stationed in Brighton. We were stationed in East Grinstead, in Crowborough. And we were out training all the time, all over. And we were even out in Wales for 3 weeks one time. And
wow.
There, they were trying to train you to be tough, I guess.
You were a single man then, obviously.
Oh yeah, I was only 19 then.
So, what did you guys do for fun on the weekends or when you were let off when you were in England?
Oh.
You remember any of those stories?
A lot of time in the pub. We didn't have any money, so, you know, we'd go, but some places we'd go in the pub and we'd just sit there and we'd play darts and.
Were there many girls around?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. How did they like the Canadian soldiers?
Some of them did, I guess. Some of them didn't. But we played a lot of darts in the pub, and the civilian people were. Sometimes we would go in a pub, and we would have enough money to buy a glass of beer, and then we'd play darts or something all evening. We had a couple of guys who were musicians, and they used to play the piano. And when our beer glass got empty, the waiter would arrive with another glass, and it would go like that all evening. Most of the time, you didn't know who bought it. At that time, I was with the 4th Armored Brigade.
The 4th Armored Brigade.
And then.
So that's what was your role there? Were you in a tank or were you?
No, I was driving truck.
Driving truck.
A motorcycle sometimes.
Right.
I didn't like the motorcycle. That was a dangerous job.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
We did a lot of driving at night, and of course over there was no lights allowed. The vehicle ahead of you had a little red light under the box, and you follow that red light. And if he went in the ditch, you went in the ditch behind him. Sometimes there would be 3 or 4 of us who go in the ditch before somebody gets stopped. But that's the way it was. You drive at night.
No lights.
No lights.
Wow.
What I found about the motorcycle, like I took a dispatch rider's course there, and the dispatch rider, you did everything. And when you had convoys, we had a lot of trucks. The only one knew where we were going was the dispatch riders. And he would, where you made a turn, there would be a dispatch rider there heading you off. And then when the last one passed, he would have to rush you past the whole convoy and get to the next place.
Right.
To head you off in the right place.
And did they get that right every time?
Yeah. Pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good, but it was dangerous because sometimes there would be traffic coming the other way, and you were going wide open in between the vehicles.
Wow. So many people get hurt during that job?
Oh, that was a job. A motorcycle, to me, you wanted to be on it every day. I had a good chum from London, Ontario, Jim Doyle. He had the course the same as me, and he was after the officer all the time to put him on a bike. But he was driving the truck the same as me most of the time. And one evening, the officer said, Doyle, you're going to take the bike tomorrow morning. And he was handling the convoy, and of course, not used to it. He hadn't been on for a few months. He'd come to a turn and he couldn't make the turn. He went into a brick building and killed himself.
Wow.
Just like that.
Wow.
But it was a job, a bad job as far as I was concerned, but
right.
It was a job you had to do steady. In England, we had Harley Davidson, then they switched us over to Nortons.
Right. Which one did you like better?
For that kind of thing there, the Norton. For the Harley, for the delivering messages or just driving by yourself,
right.
The Harley.
Right, right. So you were in England in 2 years, so you must have got over there in 42?
Yeah.
And then tell me about... You got sent over to Normandy.
We were in East Grinstead in England, and we got all prepared to go to France. And then when the time come to go in June, we went up and went aboard on the convoy. They formed up in east of London in the Thames River. And on the way to France, we went out in the North Sea and came around through the English Channel. And that's where it started.
Right. That's when it all started,
Yeah.
right?
When we came through there around midnight, we were coming through the streets of Dover. And there, of course, was only 20 miles wide, so we were in the center, and they started to shoot from shore, and submarines.
Was that D-Day or just after D-Day?
That
or what?
was just after D-Day.
Right. So they still had a Canadian. None of the forces got very far on the beach for a couple of, well.
When we got there, that was about midnight there, and the barrage went on for about 2 hours. We lost a lot of people. The boats going down. There were submarines.
Were you in a landing craft, or were you in a bigger boat?
No, in another. Well, not very big.
No,
a little bigger. When we landed, we were okay because they were in about 2-3 miles before we got there.
Right.
The 2nd and 3rd Division was there before us. They landed on D-Day, and they were in about 2-3 miles. So the first night we just went ashore. We landed about 5 o'clock. We just went ashore, and we stopped there for the night. The next day we moved up, and that night all hell broke loose. They came over a bunch of planes, and they dropped fire bombs like rain coming down, tried to burn us out.
Wow.
They had fires all over the place, and it was a rough night.
No kidding.
For the second night, and then after that was a lot of the time it was the same. You never knew what. But then when we got in a little bit farther, we were traveling more. There was room, at that time there was no room behind us. Like I say, they were in about 2 or 3 miles, so there was thousands of troops behind us. And we weren't traveling too much. But after that, we started to move ahead. And what my job was, I was driving a troop carrier. We were Army Service Corps, and we were attached to the 10th Infantry Brigade. We were moving the 3 regiments, the Lincoln and Welland, the Algonquin, and the Argyll and Sutherland. And we went over, our vehicles were in the landing craft, And when we came close enough there, we went down from the boat we were on a rope hand over hand onto the landing craft and picked up our vehicle.
Wow.
They had that pretty well arranged because I went down and I picked up my own vehicle.
Wow.
Just like that. And then we drove ashore. I was up to here in the water driving ashore. We had our vehicles waterproof. And they were fine. We went ashore. So once in a while there would be one get wet, but most of them were fine. But when we got ashore, we had to haul like a gum they had to waterproof them around the cargo. They had to haul that off to give them some air.
Right.
Or they wouldn't run.
Right.
So that's what, when you hit the water, you're just hoping that it would last long enough to get ashore.
So you were driving an armored personnel carrier.
Yeah.
How many men fit in this personnel carrier?
17 or 18. Sometimes I think we used to have 18, sometimes 17.
So the men are packed in pretty tight in this.
Well, there was benches in the trucks there along the side, and we used to take fresh troops in to the front, and the guys that were having a rest would bring them back. If they had prisoners, we would bring the prisoners back. There was a company of Germans across the road from where we were in the yard, at Farmer's Yard, and apparently they ran out of food and ammunition or whatever. There's a whole company, and we just guarded them all night, and then in the morning they came out, surrendered, and that time we had a whole company.
Wow. That's 100 men or so?
To bring back, yeah, oh yeah.
Right.
But when we were bringing prisoners back, well, we always had two drivers, a driver and a spare driver, and we used to switch out. One fellow would have the gun and the other fellow would drive. But they didn't give you any trouble because
they were happy for the war to be over for themselves, I suppose,
they
right?
checked them out before they got aboard to see they had no weapons on them.
Right.
But where we used to run into trouble, like we weren't like infantry. We were attached to infantry, but where we used to run in trouble when we were taking them in. One night we went in with a company of Algonquins, and before we got them unloaded, they opened up with shell the hell out of us. And there's a mortar landed in the back of one of our trucks, and it killed. It blew. There was either 17 or 18, and just blew them to bits. We had to pick them up in shovels.
So you had to personally pick up the bodies.
We had to help. Yeah, well, I had to help. But, that's how we picked them up, put them in bags.
What was that like?
Not good.
No.
You know. But sometimes we used to try and sneak in and get the men unloaded before they started, because they used to fire. They used to hear us or see us or something all the time. But if we could sneak in and get the men unloaded there, it wasn't too bad.
You had a better chance.
Yeah, we'd get away. We would get away.
So now you were coming up in '44. You're coming up through France. So I know it took a long time for them to take Caen.
Yeah,
that was where the stop was for quite a while. And then when they finally got through Caen, it started to move.
Yeah,
fairly fast, right?
Going a little faster.
Was the Falaise Gap anywhere near where you were?
Oh yeah,
It was.
The big mistake they made in Falaise, we were right behind it. Actually, I saw it on TV, and I recognized the place. What happened? It wasn't Falaise, it was a little town, forget the name, and they used to call for air support to bomb them before they moved in, right?
Right.
And they asked for air support this day. It was in the afternoon. It wasn't at night that time. It was in the afternoon. And they sent out a scout, because the infantry used to send out scout troops, 6 or 7 men there to see what was there.
Right.
And they sent out a scouts, and they realized that the Germans had backed up, had left the town, and then somebody gave the orders to move in, take over, and forgot to cancel the air support, and we moved in, and first thing, the planes arrived and started bombing our own men. And there was us, 4th Division here, and the next there was a Polish division. They were in worse than we were. They really got shellacked.
Right.
And there's nothing they could do about it then. But it was a big mistake. A human error.
Right.
They should have canceled
Simply forgot to cancel the air support.
They should have never given the orders to move in.
Right.
But then if they had a bomb that would have been useless. It just would have blown the little town up for nothing.
Right.
But we used to be like that all the time. We would get caught. Sometimes it would be, most of the time we would move them in the dark. But once in a while would be like 3 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock, and it would be daylight enough they could see us. And mostly in mortar fire that we used to come under, like the infantry guys were
Right.
with the rifles and machine guns. But most of the time we were under, it was mortar fire that we got into. But you never knew when it was gonna. There's all kinds of things happening. Yeah.
Did you think you might? Did you think you might die?
A lot of times.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of times.
How do you cope with that? Like day to day, thinking you're gonna
Yeah.
die.
It's very hard to hold your cool. I mean, a lot of people couldn't.
Right.
They go nuts when you get bombarded there. Steady. There was a lot of men would lose their cool and they'd go nuts. Like Lauren Cookman, my good chum from Montreal. The first night that we were in there, and I said about them coming over and trying to burn us out.
Firebombing you out. Yeah.
There's one. These fire bombs were about this long and about that big around, and they would explode, make a fire when they landed. One landed close enough and burned his hand, and he was a nervous wreck the rest of the way through. He wasn't hurt that bad. He went to the medical station and they fixed him up, and he was all right. He went right through, but he was a nervous wreck. He lost his nerve.
Right. Hard to say who's going to lose their nerve and who's not
Yeah.
going to lose their nerve.
Oh, yeah. But quite a few do. But people have fear of some things, and some people have fear of other things.
Right.
Like one night, the Germans counterattacked. This was in France, and we were along a railroad track, and there was a bank on the side, and it was in the dark. We couldn't see, but there was like what we call around here an outside cellar. They had dug a hole in the bank,
right,
and logged it up with wood, and they counterattacked, and it was artillery, and they were really peppering the hell out of us. And we crawled in there, 4 of us, and the bloody place was polluted with rats. And there's one guy who was so scared of the rats, he stood a few minutes and he crawled out. He said, "I can't stand it."
Oh, God.
He crawled out and he laid alongside of the track in the ditch.
And you made it?
Oh, he was all right.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of things happen, eh?
Day to day. So how do you attribute? You kept. Here you are, 92, and you've got your whole family, and you seem to be in fantastic physical health and mental health. What do you attribute your ability to stay cool during this whole thing? Why do you think you could?
I don't know. I think it's just the difference in people. I would be scared to death sometimes, I think that's only normal.
Yeah.
You have somebody trying to shoot you. Like, I could tell you one little story.
Yeah.
One day in Holland, the captain said to me, I don't think you would remember, but there used to be old cartoons there, funny papers we used to call them at that time. It used to be Moon Mullins.
Moon Mullins. Oh.
So I had the nickname of Moon. Well, our captain said to me one day, he said, "Moon, I got a message to go to the colonel of the Argyle and Sutherland, but you'll have to take my Jeep. There's no bike available." So, okay, I got in the Jeep and I goes up, and the only way we could find them, they had a little sign about this big with a number on it. And I come up, and it was in Holland with dikes across. And I started out on this dike, And first thing, one of the Argyle, there was two of them in the slip trench there, and he gave me a sign that the Germans was right behind. They were behind a great big tree, eh?
Right.
And on the next big tree, there was Germans. And the guy gave me time to get the hell out of there.
How far away were they?
100 feet. And he couldn't step out from behind the tree because they would have shot him, eh? But he stuck the gun out somehow, and he let go a blast at me. At this time, I was getting away in a hurry. But you know, I was so goddamn scared, I shook for a half an hour.
Wow.
I just trembled.
Adrenaline just...
But then, that's when it was hard to keep your cool, because I hadn't found my man to give the message to yet. I still had to find that. I couldn't give up there.
Right.
So I got back off the dike anyway, and I did find him. After I came off the dike, I saw the little sign, 84, and I never forgot that.
Wow.
But, you know, you get so scared that, well, naturally, I guess it's normal. You got somebody firing at you with a machine gun. Belgium wasn't as bad as Holland. Holland, they were fighting hard in Holland, but I don't know, the Germans seemed to be disorganized. They seemed to move to retreat more in Belgium. I mean, they used to counterattack quite often, but well, we pulled into this place. Germans retreated. When they would retreat, we would move in, and they had a garage that they had taken from a Dutchman, and they used it for their army, and they made a barracks up on the second floor of it. So we pulled in there, and we were used to sleeping on the ground or a lot of the time nothing, and not sleeping at all. And we pulled into this place, and our captain said, "We're not supposed to move tonight. We're going to be spending the night here." And somebody went in and looked and said, "We're going to have a bed to sleep in tonight." So we got all set up in there at about 8:30. They knew exactly where the building was, of course. They sent over a V2 rocket.
Wow. And
it landed about 15 feet on that side of the building, but their distance was right on. And it just blew us. We just went in the air. The only two guys, we had two guards out in front, and they were both killed, but there was about 35 of us in the building, and there was some broken bones and injuries. But being that the explosion came from there, it sort of took the roof away from us.
Right.
It didn't blow. And that's where I got deaf. I didn't realize until Greedy used to tell me I was deaf all the time. But when I went to the audiologist, she said, "Was you ever in an explosion?" She said, your damage in your ears is caused from a concussion." And I said, "Well, I was in a lot, but I was in one big one, and that one was really big."
So were you sleeping or laying on the bed? Or?
No, it was only 8:30. We were all wide awake, but we just went flying.
And all of a sudden you just...
Yeah, because the V2 rockets couldn't hear. They had two rockets. They had a V1.
Yeah.
And it made more noise than any airplane.
They'd send those all the way to England, right?
Yeah. But the V2 was silent. You didn't hear it coming. You didn't know anything until it hit.
Wow.
And not, like I say, they had the distance right on, but...
Just on the landed on the far side.
They landed about 15 feet from the building on the side. The explosion went like that there.
Wow. So we're trying to get out of that wreck and that mess and everything.
We never got straightened out until the morning because it was 8:30 at night.
Stuff was everywhere.
Yeah.
Right. So, how far did you got into Germany?
Yeah, I was about 2 months in Germany.
No kidding. You went up.
We went through Kalkar, Cleve, and down along the Rhine River. We crossed the Rhine River on a floating bridge, and we were in there, I would say 2 months before the war finished. But there, you had to watch for the France, Belgium, Holland. You didn't worry about civilians; they were all for you.
Right.
But after we crossed in Germany, the civilians would try and kill you as quick as the soldiers.
Is that right?
Oh yeah, they did kill some too.
I didn't know that. I thought the movies you watch and that don't portray it that way. That's real interesting. So
I can tell you one little town there. They did get a couple of our guys. A little town called Sogel, Sogel, and they got a couple of guys. We were warned, nobody walk alone.
Right.
And they did get a couple of our guys there.
They shoot them, or how did they get them? Shot them?
No, they killed them. I don't know how I didn't see them, but
right.
They killed them somehow.
Wow. Probably
with a baseball bat or something.
Right.
And could be a gun too, because they had guns.
Right.
Hidden.
So what was the state of the German people? Were they pretty starved or weak, or were they still fairly strong, the civilians and what was left there?
They were. Holland was. There was hundreds of thousands starved to death in Holland. But in Germany, I didn't see anybody that I would say was really hungry.
Right.
But they probably didn't have too much. But there, you had to watch.
Where did you, when the war ended, where were you then?
We were about 20 miles from Hamburg.
And then, what was that like when you heard the war was over?
Oh, that was something, quite a celebration. Then the first thing they asked for volunteers to go to the Pacific.
Oh, God.
Because the war was still going to the Pacific. And I said to my chum, he said, "You're crazy, goddamn." So I said, I'm going to volunteer to go there, and I'm going home because that war is soon going to be finished. Before I get there, I got to go down the States and train, and before I get over there, the war is going to be finished. So he thought I was crazy, but anyway, I volunteered, and sure enough, I came home. I came back. We were in England for a month or so, and then we got on the boat, came home.
Did you actually make it back to Gas Bay?
I had 30 days leave. While I was on my 30 days leave in Gas Bay, they dropped the atomic bomb and the war finished.
Wow.
Oh, I said, there.
You made the right call there.
I made the right call.
Yeah, that was pretty smart. I wasn't aware that they were bringing Canadians over as well. I only knew the Americans were going for sure.
Yeah, well, I knew it would take a while because they said we would go to Kentucky and train for a month or 2 months or whatever before you go over. So I took a guess that the war would be finished before I got there.
That was pretty smart. What was the day that the Germans surrendered? Was there a lot of fighting leading up to it, or were you guys kind of quiet by the time they surrendered?
We were quite a few days there, but there was still things.
Lots of ways to die.
They were trying to gain something there. There was a guy from Sunnybank was killed the last day.
Wow.
Herman Coffin.
What a shame.
Yeah.
So when you, all the guys you fought with, was pretty much all Canadians. You're all Canadians together.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
They never mixed the British in, or
No. We were all Canadians, but the outfit I was with, there was only one Gaspesian beside me.
right?
Bert Roberts from Little Gaspé, and he shot himself.
In the war or after?
Yeah.
In the war.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was an accident, but we had a Sten gun, and they were no.
There's a little.
Yeah, a bunch of tin. They were no good for nothing. Sometimes they would fire, and sometimes they wouldn't, and sometimes what happened to him, and his name came up to go on a weekend pass, and he was packing up. We were right on the border between Holland and Germany at that time. I was about, from here down to Megan from their house from him.
Right.
So I didn't see it happen, but I knew the guys he was with for sure. And he was packing up his stuff because he was going on a weekend pass the next morning, and he hauled his Sten gun towards him, and it started to fire, and he pumped a whole bunch of bullets in his stomach.
Wow.
He lived the night. We got news the next day that he died in the morning.
Wow.
But he's the only guy from Gaspé that was in the outfit that I knew, anyway. I mean, some of them, if they were in another platoon or a company there, they could be there and you wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know, right?
But they were desperate. The Germans were bad against especially the Dutch people. The Dutch people really suffered.
They did, didn't they?
Starved to death. And they were poorly treated. But in the end, they had kids in the army. They retreated one night in a town in Holland called Bergen op Zoom, and we came in and it was getting daylight in the morning, and there was a young fellow in the slit trench. Everybody thought nobody bothered with him. They figured he was dead. After a while, he woke up. When they retreated there, they missed him. He had been, I suppose he was played out and he was asleep. But the poor young bugger, he was scared to death.
How old would he have been?
Oh, I would say no more than 16 for sure.
Wow. I suppose that's at the end of the war. That's all they had was old men and young boys. Yeah. You saw those up front. So what would you do? Who would be the first person if they had prisoners like that? How did they get them over to put them in your truck or whatever?
Oh, they just somebody would just march them over and check them out. And like him there, they just took him in a jeep. And right. Somebody drove him back. But the poor young bugger, he was scared, so scared it was unbelievable. He cried and But those kind of things were happening every day.
Right. Everything was a mess. So let me ask you a couple of maybe real personal questions.
Yeah.
Did you ever have to kill anybody that you knew of?
No, not on my job. I was just moving them. I was driving, and
right.
So I had a machine gun. I had a Sten gun there, but no, I didn't use it on anybody. I didn't have to.
That's good. That's one good thing.
Yeah.
You told me it took you about 50 years to kind of get over it. When you look back at those 50 years, what was the part that you had to get over? Like what's the hardest part of the war?
Well, what I used to dream, I have dreams there like I was cornered. They had me cornered and I couldn't get out. And that's what I would dream about, being cornered and trying to find a way to get myself out.
Right.
I just have like a nightmare.
And how often did that happen?
Oh, that happened often, every few nights.
Wow. Did you ever go talk to anybody?
No,
When you got out of the army, there was no such thing as mental health help or
no,
PTSD or none of that
no,
stuff, right?
no, not at that time.
And there was sort of a stigma to not talk about it. Was that kind of
Uh,
sort of the unwritten rule, or why was it like
no,
that?
I don't think there was any rule. There was nothing really that they just didn't. I don't know. You figured that nobody would want to hear it,
Is that right? Wow.
or if they wouldn't believe it, or whatever. Because you know the worst things that you tell somebody there, and it would be hard to believe.
Right.
There's definitely sometimes things that happen that it would be hard to believe. You might think somebody was lying when they were telling you because you're getting some terrible scrapes.
Right. Every day is
Yeah.
is there any one day or specific days or times that stick out still in your memory that
Well, actually, something that I never forgot is the night we were going over. Because we were bombarded for about 2 hours in the boat, and I hated on the water.
right?
I didn't want to swim. There was people swimming there, and there was people by the dozens in the water.
Wow.
And what can you do? You're on a bloody boat. And just think now, if they hit this boat, actually they did hit the boat like we were here. They were like this, and the torpedo had to come from this way, and it blew the whole side out of the boat right next to us. It must have missed us by inches.
Wow.
But we made her through, never got hit. But
That's your first action in combat,
yeah,
right?
it was really on edge for a couple of hours. Once we got past the narrow part, then we were quiet the rest of the way because they couldn't shoot from shore; it was too far.
Right.
Submarines, I don't know. They probably had them
Usually,
posted.
I'm going to, baby's kind of acting up. It's going to take him over. When you're finished, give me a call and I'll come back. We'll pick you up, okay?
Yeah, we're probably getting under 5 or 10 minutes.
Well, he's acting up pretty well, little fella. So he's been really good, but take your time.
Okay. All right, I'll give you a shout.
They probably kept the submarines there because they knew everybody had to pass
Had to go
there.
through. Right.
But to hear people in the water,
You got a car keys?
I think Audrey's got him, or I sat him down just out there.
Oh, you got them, okay.
You got him? You okay to continue a little bit more?
to see people in the water, it's with no way out. And I didn't see it myself, but one of the guys said there was a hospital ship went down alongside of us, and he said there was a nurse tried to crawl out the porthole, and when she went under, she was halfway out, stuck in the porthole.
No.
I mean, things like that, that bothers you. But then we went ashore fine, but after that the first night we were okay, the second night we weren't okay, and we were never okay after that because you never knew what was going to happen. You do stupid things too, it was just a reflex. One day it was four of us standing up. It was quiet, so we were standing up talking. It was raining, of course, like it did a lot. And we had a cook. We didn't have too much to cook, but we did have, and it was because it was raining. We put up a tarp so it could be under. His stove was only a big blowtorch, really. And we were standing there talking, and all of a sudden, a Bren carrier came along, two guys, and they ran over a landmine right in front of us, and it just blew everything to bits. and the four of us ran under this tarp, and those pieces came off of that.
Wow.
Brent carrier that it would have taken the tarp and us along with it. Big pieces of wheels, and the two guys, of course, were finished. But things like that, you're just on your nerves.
It would be hard to ever relax.
Another day there was 3 or 4 guys, and I wasn't one of them. I wasn't there with them, but I knew the guy. There was a guy sitting over his motorcycle, and all of a sudden an artillery shell cut his head off. Didn't know where it came from.
So you couldn't know which side it could have came from
Yeah.
either, I suppose. Right? Wow, those are.
But like the infantry guys that we were taking in now, they were worse off than we were, because they were right in hand to hand.
Face to face.
Yeah.
Yeah. I suppose a lot of them. Did you ever get a chance to take a shower or get back off the line or this kind of stuff? Like a lot of those guys.
Well, this is a funny story too. In France, after we were in there a few days, what we did, we had a gas came in 4-gallon cans, and we took one. We punched a bunch of holes in the bottom, and we used to dig a little hole in the ground and pour full of gas, and heat some water and pour it in this can and stand underneath it. Have a shower. There's a guy from Kenora, Ontario, Peter Gibbs. He was standing underneath there having a shower, and there's a woman, and I suppose her daughter. See him walking along, and they stopped and watched him. He said, "Jesus, what kind of people have they got over there?" He said, they just stopped and looked at me. He said, "I couldn't stop because I only had a little bit of water, and I had to
use it.
use it."
Any of your old guys from your unit or around? How many? Any of you left alive other than you that you know of?
I don't really. No, I really don't know, because
Right.
most of the guys I was with were from West. A lot from Winnipeg, from Manitoba.
Right. So
A
lost
lot of
touch with a lot of them.
A lot of them from Manitoba, some from Alberta. There was 2 or 3 guys I can think of from British Columbia. But they're, like my main chum that I said he lost his nerve there. He was from Montreal, but he moved out to Vancouver. And I never heard tell of him after. I saw him when I came back in Montreal, but I just saw him once there, and then he moved out to British Columbia.
Right.
And I guess he stayed there. But like I say, they would all be at least 91, 92.
Right.
It's a hard thing to see people starving to death, I found.
Is that the hardest?
We saw a lot of that in the hall. People starving, You had nothing to give them. In France, we had a little bit. We went in, 3 of us one day, after the barrage was on, the Germans retreated, and 3 of us went into a house, farmhouse, and there was a man had been hit when the barrage was on, and I guess it was his wife. He was only a young man, and there was an older woman, and he couldn't get out of bed. He had been hit with shrapnel or a bullet or something, and they had nothing to eat. 3 of them in the house, not a thing to eat. So we scrounged up what we could, a few biscuits or something, corned beef, and he said something to her. I couldn't understand French at that time, and he said something to the young woman. Must have been his wife, I guess. She went in the cupboard in the kitchen and got a shovel, because they had everything. They had to hide everything, and the Germans would take it. And she went out in the backyard and she dug up a bottle of champagne and brought it in, set it on the table. Chocolate with champagne. Oh,
Wow.
that was some good. But they had nothing to eat and they were so happy to get something to keep them alive. Well, we knew that we were going through there and there would be somebody within a day or so
Right.
that would be able to give them food. But we a lot of times we didn't have much food either. You know? The longest I ever went without eating at all was 2 days. But lots of times we'd go a day with nothing. You just couldn't get it up to you.
Right. And you had like the little meal replacement kits, or
Yeah.
is that what they call them in the Canadian Army?
They used to call them emergency rations.
Emergency
It's a
rations.
little box about this square there.
Right. And what was in that thing?
There was some, like, not soda biscuits, but hardtack biscuits.
Right.
And like bully beef, a few candies, and a cake of porridge, oatmeal, and a few candies.
Yeah. No chocolate bar?
No.
That was the Americans with the chocolate bars, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the Americans, they used to tell us the Americans, oh, the Americans got good food, but we got a shipment one time of Americans stew in little cans about that high. It was horrible stuff. Around the outside was a white dough about that thick right around the can and just a few little pieces of meat in the middle. And you, most of the time you had to eat that cold because you had no chance.
Couldn't make a fire.
To eat it.
Right. Did you guys have those little, like I don't know if it was stew or whatever, they had the little tea lighters at the bottom of them or whatever? Another veteran I talked to of D-Day said they had some of those. Did you ever see those?
Oh, some of them, no, we never had them.
No? It was interesting what some guys remember. I remember one guy said after D-Day they had, I don't know, he was the British, and he was part of the British Army. So they might have different rations, but
yeah, well, with that they could you could put some water in and well, I suppose you would say milk your porridge, because the porridge that we had in the emergency rations was hard.
Right.
I used to eat mine like a biscuit. We came back on the Ile de France. It was well equipped for troops. They had canvas beds.
Nice.
But the one going over was a horrible mess. There were so many people sick, and you was walking around in that. And like the guys sleeping on the floor, like I said, the ones in the hammocks were puking down on them there. What a bloody.
Wow. So when you first, when you knew the war was over, and you volunteered to go over to the Japanese theater of action, I guess you'd call it. How long before the war was over till you got out of there? Like how long did you stick around Germany?
Only a few days.
Is that right?
Yeah, we came back to Holland, Nijmegen, and then we were shipped out from Nijmegen to Bruges in Belgium, and we caught a boat to come into England. But we were about a month in England before we went to Glasgow, and we left from Glasgow on a boat.
Back to Canada.
Yeah.
And that took you back to Halifax again?
Yeah.
And then...
we landed in Halifax, and we went on a train to Montreal. And then from Montreal to Gaspé.
Wow.
Got on a spree in Montreal and didn't get home the first day.
I think you probably earned that spree. Anything else from your experiences with war that you'd like to share? Anything else comes to mind?
Oh, I don't know. There's a lot of different things, but like I say, it's 72 years ago, and
We could sit here and talk all night.
don't come don't come to your mind right away. There was some things were good and some were very unpleasant, some were good. So when I was having the nightmares, and I never used to tell Greta what was going on, but she used to get upset there, wondering what was wrong, because apparently I used to holler sometimes. And it wasn't easy. But I kept getting farther apart, and I just sort of weaned my way out somehow.
You said took 50 years to sort of make peace with it.
Yeah, I finally got over it there. I didn't think I was ever going to get over it.
What do you think? What was the difference, or what was the change, or how did you get over it?
I don't know. I just started getting less and less, and finally, even now, if I have pains in my legs or something, I'll dream, but not about war.